Hey guys, we're here with Sibon. He's just going to explain his decks real quick that he brought to the Bloodborne Invitational that we hosted today, in January 5th or 6th, doesn't really matter. So basically, this looks like a pretty standard Tempo Argion deck, and you include the Scintilla and
hmm
Trinity Oath from the new set. So what about those two cards? Do you think what do they bring to the Tempo Agion, which had been a pretty powerful deck beforehand, and is now kind of phasing out the kind of higher end Divine Bond Agions?
The Scintilla and Trinity Oath really help shore up the Songhai matchup, because Songhai generally you want to play lower curve decks to kind of just win on board early on, and then the Scintilla and the Trinity Oath lets you heal up, and the Trinity Oath lets you refill your hand to play more of these low curve minions.
Right, yeah, you're really able to not have to worry about kind of fizzling out late game when you have the ability to draw three cards, and
hmm
also oftentimes develop in that same turn with Trinity because it doesn't, cost all your mana often. And then the second kind of interesting card you have is Decimate. What is that? What is that really good against, and what are you hoping to target with that?
The Decimate is mostly just like a third Tempest, where it can kill buffed up ranged minions, or obelisks, or anything that they would just play defensively, like a Fallen's Magi even, and really just, or a Kaleno. Kaleno is also another big one. And it just really helps with a lot of matchups where they play threats behind them and then move away from the threats to play around Holy Immolation or Lightbender, and then it can be decimated.
Right. And just as a deck in kind of total, what matchups does Agion have that are really good, and which decks are you looking to face, and which ones might you be looking to avoid?
This should hopefully have a good matchup against more aggressive Raver lists and more aggro Magma lists. I'm hoping to counter especially those two with this.
Okay, and it does, yeah, because it does have some life gain as well as the taunt, excuse me, the provoke minions, and Holy Immolation is such a strong tempo play against those more aggressive lists.
Absolutely.
And next you have a much more controlling list. It's kind of a Fey build, and it utilizes a couple of the new cards, which I think added a lot. Both Concealing Shroud and Enfeeble, especially in combination with the Blistering Scorn, which is kind of seeing a little bit of a revitalization after it kind of got nerfed a little bit. So, what's the game plan for this deck, and how have the new cards kind of added to this game plan?
So with the old control Fey, the win condition used to be Warbird 13 times to kill your opponent. But with the addition of Meltdown, that has sped it up somewhat, and that provides a nice alternate win condition. So basically the whole deck is designed to stall out the game until you can run away, play Warbird every turn, have a Meltdown, and just chip away at them or smash away at them if you have Meltdown until you win.
Right, yeah, it stops being chipping when it's 7 damage a swing.
hmm
Um, so you kind of have a couple different packages here. You have the Jaxi along with, excuse me, the Mock of Solitude. This is something I've seen you play a couple times. What about this kind of combination? Do you do you like a lot? What do you think this brings to the deck, and how does this help you out?
Well, when you're against decks that aren't Cassava, Jaxi will decently often go unanswered for at least a turn, and when that happens, you can play Mark of Solitude, and if this is early enough in the game, that's pretty much a free win right there. So I'm just playing it for the possibility to cheese wins really early on, to just give me a big early boost, and then this deck has such a good late game. If I have a great start like that, I've basically won the game.
Right, and this seems, like it has a very strong anti-aggro package with the Concealing Shrouds, Gravity Wells, and the Enfeeble Blistering Scorn, as well as you having one aspect of the mountain. What kind of situations is that for, and why do you choose to go with that over, something that might be a little bit easier to use and not as situational?
I just think Aspect of the Mountain is a really nice card to have if you're playing Gravity Well and Snow Chaser. I'd probably always play one index with those two cards, and it acts as more damage-based removal. I've already got Bone Reaper, Meltdown, Dancing Blades, and Blistering Scorn. So this is just even more to help clear the board every turn, and keep keep my advantage up.
Right. And what are your best matchups with this deck, and what are you trying to avoid?
Trying to avoid the mirror probably because that can just get really complicated, and trying to avoid anything that's going super late game like this because it ideally exists to run aggro and mid-range decks out of steam and eventually whittle them down.
Right. Okay. And next up, I think we have Cassiva. This is pretty close to what we saw before the new cards, with just the addition of Punish, which a lot of people, I think probably both of us included, expected to be hugely metagame warping. So, what do you think the effect of Punish has been, and has it lived up to the hype, or do you think it's more of a just a very good card, but not necessarily hugely metagame warping?
I think it didn't live up to the hype because the hype was immense, but it is an incredibly good card, and it definitely discourages people from playing the higher curve minions.
Right, it's definitely pushed out some of the Ironcliff Guardians we would have seen before.
Hmm.
Um, and why? I know a lot of people were talking about Lilith being very strong, especially Kolos. After I believe he won, it's escaping me, but a fairly substantial tournament recently. So why did you choose to go towards Cassiva as opposed to kind of the Grandmaster Lilith that a lot of people had been hyping up just about a week ago?
Well, part of my strategy for this tournament will be to ban every Abyssian deck my opponent plays. And not the main, but a big reason Lilith is so good is because it has a good Cassava matchup. So if there's no Lilith to deal with, and there's no mirror to deal with, Cassava becomes a much safer pick against like the Songhais, the Lionars, the Magmars, just because of the ping from the Bloodborne helps a lot with
Right.
survivability and the ability to use Punish effectively.
Right. So that kind of highlights some of the differences between ladder and tournament play. Is you can kind of target specific decks or choose to avoid them, and kind of build your lineup around that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Past that, I think it's we see that Abyssian had very strong cards going in, and with the addition of Punish, it just got a little bit of a boost for this strategy, whereas most of the cards seem to be focused more on the Lilith strategy. So that we saw kind of a revitalization of that a little bit. Excuse me. Sorry, my throat's a little bit scratchy. And then your last deck is Magma, which is what you're known for. And this actually looks pretty close to something you would have played before the new cards,
Hmm.
with just the addition of the Entropic Gaze, which is seeing huge amounts of play in more aggressive strategies. So you're kind of playing it in more of a it's tough to call this super mid range because it does still cap out at 6 mana and kill pretty quickly, I'd imagine. But what kind of pushed you kind of towards more the middle, less of the kind of full masochism, Rancor, Flameblood Warlock decks, Decimus even, and Tectonic Spikes? What pushed you away from that and more towards this strategy?
I tested them a lot, and I found that the closer and closer I got to the old deck I was running, the better things turned out for me. And the old deck that I was running was pretty much just this, but without Entropic Gaze and with 3 Mandrakes.
Right.
So I cut the Mandrakes and just focused like super early mid game, put in the 3 Entropic Gaze, and it usually is just very consistent and can pull out wins against absolutely any deck with a good enough start.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Macantor, Thumping Wave, Flash, Sunsteel kind of package that we see a lot is still very strong, and Plasma Storm still being a very good clear against a lot of the meta. Um, so one question, this is maybe a little bit more kind of abstracted, but what what matchups or what kind of benefit do you see this type of deck giving you over the more aggressive decks? Where does it fare better and where does it fare worse? What is kind of what is the reasoning? You said you got better win percentage as you moved closer to this. What was kind of the weaknesses that kind of the old strategy shored up over kind of the new, more gimmicky, perhaps more exciting decks that we've been seeing with the Decimus combos and things like that?
The reason I prefer this is it is capable of creating a very strong board presence very early on because of the Flash Sunsteel, Flash, Spelljammer, and then you can heal it with Healing Mystic, and especially Greater Fortitude, which basically turns your young Silithar into a 4-drop minion that is just tears through everything.
Right, the pre-nerf veteran Silithar, sort of.
Yep, yep. And the main problem with the aggressive deck is it loses on board very early to a lot of decks, especially Lionar. You just turn 2, you've already lost the game because they have a big board and you don't. Whereas this deck can actually compete with the massive board Lionar can set up early and clear that away and hopefully win off that.
Right, yeah, Mechanta, Thumping Wave, Plasma Storm type of cards always kind of give you the chance to turn around the board a little bit and kind of retake control. Now, you are running 3 Earth Spheres. Is that sort of a concession to the more aggressive strategies, or is that something you'd normally do?
It's something I do in pretty much every deck.
Oh, really?
I really like Earthsphere, and I think having 3 of them helps a great deal against, especially Vanar and Songhai.
Right, you can kind of run them out of steam because, they're using one card to deal 3 or 2 or 4 damage, whereas you're healing up with 8 on one card. And one thing that I think we've talked about a little bit before was kind of the choice of Spelljammer as opposed to other card draw alternatives. A few of your decks you're using, I think, Sojourner, and in the past, I think we've talked about Sworn Sister. So why do you choose Spelljammer in this deck specifically?
Elkion is a very viable alternative to Spelljammer, and in the past I was playing 3 Spelljammer and 1 Elkion, or 3 Spelljammer and 2 Elkion. But this deck is very tight for space, and the Spelljammer just provides a bigger body, but like 1 more attack, 1 more health than Elkion, and that is very important early on. As well as the... Over Sojourner, I would never play Sojourner in this deck, because it has 1 health, and you don't want to play things with 1 health other than Shroud, which is a necessary evil.
But yeah, the one attack just means it's not a very effective
Yeah.
at fighting for the board. I think one
And,
thing.
well, natural selection.
Oh, and of course, yeah,
As well.
natural selection.
And another big thing is being able to Greater Fortitude something to put it over 3 attack and then playing Plasma, like you can with Elkion and Spelljammer.
Right, yeah, that's true of everything except your shrouds, which, as you said, is kind of a necessary evil because dispel is so important, especially with the concealing shroud now. If you don't have dispel, sometimes you're kind of
Oh yeah.
stuck for a turn. And I think, yeah, another thing maybe is I feel like when they changed the Spelljammer, which was maybe a month ago, maybe even more at this point, the kind of flash into Spelljammer play became a lot more valuable in Magma. So I think that kind of maybe do you think that pushes it into a little more viability in Magma specifically? The ability to
Yeah,
flash it out and still have a good body?
I do. And Flash Spelljammer Healing Mystic to heal the Spelljammer is one of the strongest opening plays in the game.
Right, yeah. I mean, you generate a very strong board presence, and you kind of mitigate the card disadvantage that Flash would normally give you. Well, good luck in the tournament. Thanks for showing us your decks. I hope you able to take it down.
Thank you very much.